learned so much from him, and he is my spiritual guide. And I discovered him on YouTube a number of years ago, and he was still living in America at the time. And when I heard he was moving to Israel, I was very, very excited. And he's come to Rambam a couple of times to speak. And I really hope that you get a lot of inspiration and that this really touches your soul tonight.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. It's a really big honor and pleasure to be here. It should be an aliyah of the neshama for your father and your brother. The inspiration for today's class, well, a couple parts of inspiration. One is I haven't had an all-women's class since I was in Queens. So obviously, you know, my wife always says, speak to your audience. I remember I was going to my kid's school, and my daughter was 5 at the time. We had moved to Israel, and they wanted her mom to come and to speak about our aliyah process. My wife doesn't like to speak so much in public, so she asked me if I want to do it, and I said, yeah, of course. So I went in there, and right before I got in there, my wife called me and she told me, David, listen, these kids are 5. Please don't talk for an hour about very deep concepts in Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism and Chassidut, and they're 5. Make it short, make it funny, make it sweet, that's it. I said, yeah, of course, don't worry. And I was just planning out my 20-minute speech right before that. But Baruch Hashem went well. So anyway, now we have a group of women. And it's very kedai because we're moving into a brand new year of Tafshin Pei Dalet. And in Kabbalah, they learn that the essence of the year is coming from those last 2 numbers in the year. They usually just refer to it as the last 2 numbers. So this was year Pei Gimel. This next year is going to be Pei Dalet. So every word in the Hebrew Torah has a shorish, has a root. Usually the word is 3 letters. That's the root of the word. But there are some of the commentaries who explain that really there's 2 word roots. The third is ancillary. So what's the 2-letter root of this word, Pei Dalet? It's the root of the word Padeh. Padeh means redemption. It means Geula. Okay? So to be able to understand what could be different about next year than this year that would necessitate a redemptive experience for us collectively and personally, so we have to understand, well, how did redemptions in the past happen? Because we know that this is not the only redemption that's ever taken place, it's just the final one. So Chazal, the Jewish sages, they explain very explicitly in the Gemara and the Midrashim that redemption for the Jewish people always came in merit of Jewish women. And it goes on to explain all the different times that this took place. Whether we go all the way back to the redemption in Mitzrayim, where Paro says that if you guys have any children, we're going to throw them into the river. Miriam comes as a child, like your brother. She was ahead of her time, and she came to her dad, who decided to temporarily separate from her wife. He was the leader of the Jewish people, and he didn't want to be responsible for putting people in a precarious situation because you're supposed to live with the Torah. Hashem doesn't want you to die for the mitzvot. In fact, most of the mitzvot you're not supposed to keep if you're in a situation where you might chas v'halila be in such a dangerous situation. And him being the leader of the generation, he decided, I'm going to set the example, and even though I love my wife, we're going to separate for now, so that we don't have children and put them in that situation. Not unsimilar to people in our generation who say, how can I give birth to a child in this generation? Our world is so messed up. Comes Miriam, who is very righteous and very wise and way ahead of her time, and she comes to her dad and says, but if you don't be together with mom, then you're worse than Paro. Because Paro said, I'm going to throw boys into the river, and if you don't have any kids, that means that you're throwing boys and girls both into the river, because we can't have any. And he said, you're right. And they got back together, and from that conversation and from that initial union came Moshe Rabbeinu.
Doesn't Miriam have a title, Hanavit or Hanaviah?
Yeah, sure. She was a very, very big prophetess. She was a very, very righteous person.
And their other brother has the title HaKohen, Aaron HaKohen.
That's right. They had a very special family. They were Leviim.
Yeah.
So Miriam really was the cause of the birth of the Redeemer, right?
She follows her brother down the river.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And then after that, it wasn't over. She actually followed him down the river. And then when the Batya said that he needed a Jewish nurse because he wasn't taking milk from us, so then Miriam came over and said, I know a Jewish woman who would be perfect for the job. And that was actually Moshe's mother, Yocheved. Okay? So that was just one example. But when it comes to Yavon in Greece, it was a Jewish woman who saved the Jewish people. Esther in Persia saved the Jewish people. This keeps repeating itself. Okay? So in this upcoming year, if we're going to have a redemptive year, it means we're going to have a feminine year. When the Chabad came to America, so obviously it was very different than Eastern Europe. And it was in the middle of a lot of renaissance, a lot of changes socially. One of those changes, what was called the feminist movement, right? Women were starting to take on a much more predominant role in society. They were fighting for the right to be able to express themselves just like men did. And when the Chabad Hasidim saw these women for the first time, they came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and they told him, listen, there's something very weird going on with the Jewish women in America. They're not normal. They're like very demonstrative and they're very out there and they're trying to like prove something and we don't know what to do or how to approach it. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe got so excited when he heard that Jewish women were becoming so dominant. Because the Arizal teaches that in the final generation before the coming of Mashiach, the feminine aspect of the soul is going to become very, very strong. To the extent that he says that if you have a Talmid Chacham in that final generation, he will not be wearing the pants in the relationship. One of the ways you're going to know that the Geula is coming is if the wife is the one who's calling all the shots in the relationship. Which, is a lot of people in our generation. So this was the Arizal's amazing redemptive sign. If the wife is the one who's the strong one in the family, so you know that the Geula is coming. Okay? So what does it mean to be spiritually feminine? So one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves in this coming year is try to cultivate a deeper relationship with HaShem. And what does it mean, a deeper relationship with Hashem? It means to have a more intimate relationship with Hashem. What is it that women crave more than anything? I still don't know the answer. I was hoping when I came here that you guys would tell me. But from what I read in the textbook, apparently women really like intimacy. And intimacy doesn't have to be sexual intimacy. Intimacy can just simply be that me and you are together, you're present, I'm present, we're spending time alone with each other. I see this all the time with couples. Like the wife says, we stay up at night, like after the kids go to sleep, and we just sit down and we sit with each other. And I said, well, what do you talk about? And he said, whatever's going on. I was like, but you were with each other the whole day. So she knows everything that happened. He knows everything that happened. He said, yeah, it's not really about that. It's just about us being together. Something very special about that. Something unbelievable about that. Something very ge'udik about that. Hashem just loves to be with you. Okay? So we have to figure out how we can have a more intimate relationship with Hashem. For this, we're going to have to go to the Torah of intimacy, which we call Chassidus. The Baal Shem Tov came to the world and he opened up a brand new connection to Hashem. One that was not only black and white, it wasn't only statistical, it wasn't like I'm yotze the mitzvah and that's our relationship. Comes the Baal Shem Tov to tell us that Hashem loves you so much. He loves you so much you can't fathom how much he loves you. There was a chassid of the Baal Shem Tov who he couldn't have kids for 20 years. And he finally had an only child. And the happiness that he had in his face when he's walking around with that kid, how much he loved that kid. And the Baal Shem Tov came up to him, and in a way which was a little bit unlike him, a little charif, he told him something amazing. He said, listen, you know how much you love that boy? And he said, yeah. He said, can I tell you the truth? HaShem loves the worst of the worst Jew 1,000 times more than you love that boy. And how much of us are always wondering, does Hashem like me? Is he happy with me? Is he proud of me? Am I doing a good job? And can you imagine, like, this whole time, if he could just tell you, like, I love you. I really love you. You don't have to do anything for me to love you. If you learn more Torah, I'm not going to love you anymore. If you perform more mitzvot, it doesn't make me love you anymore. For sure, maybe I'll get more nachat from you. You know, like parents, when their kids go in the way that they want them to and feels like it's good for them, gives them more nachat, but doesn't cause the parent to love them any more or less, unless the parent's not healthy. We're going to assume that Hashem is healthy for the time being, for the shiur, for the purposes of the shiur, okay? I once heard from Rav Chaim Kramer that he heard from somebody else. This is a very Jewish way to say anything, okay? How do you be close to someone? How do you be close to something? How can you be close to something or someone that you don't talk to? Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, the great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, said, do you know why your emunah is lacking? Do you know why it's hard for you to feel and experience in a palpable way every day that Hashem is with you, that He loves you, that He's helping you, that He hears you, that He wants the best for you? He says there's only one reason, because you're not talking to Him. Because intimacy requires speaking. In fact, to be human means to talk. If you look in the beginning of creation, Onkelos, who was the first translator of the Torah, says that man is called a ruach mimala, which means a speaking spirit. Meaning what makes us human essentially is that we speak. So if we're not speaking, that's called exile. And the Arizal says this explicitly, that the exile of Mitzrayim, which is really a way in which the Torah is describing all exiles, because the word Mitzrayim means meitzarim, which means a constriction. That's what an exile is. You're in a constricted space, you feel alienated, you feel outside, you feel strange. He says that what is that being brought by? What's the cause of that feeling strange, feeling different, feeling alienated, feeling on the outside looking in? And the Arizal says, because speech is in exile. Dibur is in Galut. When Dibur comes out of exile, there's going to be Geula. Who is the soul of Mashiach? Anyone know here? Does anyone know? It's not rhetorical. I don't usually get to speak with people in person anymore. Everything's online now. So. Yosef. Okay, good. So Yosef was one of the messianic figures. They call him Mashiach ben Yosef. Okay. But when we usually think about the Mashiach, we think about David. Because it says that the Mashiach is going to be the son of David. Okay?
So he has to descend from David.
He has to descend from David. What made David special? What made David unique? What made David, let's say, different than Yosef? Go ahead.
He was taken right out of the pasture, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So he was alienated from a very young age.
Yeah.
He sang. What else? What else did he do?
He was anointed by Shmuel HaNavi.
That's true. And before that happened, what was he doing? Singing and tending sheep. Okay. He did a lot of tshuva, yeah.
When Nathan the prophet said, you've sinned, he accepted.
He did tshuva, right? He acknowledged. He acknowledged.
He was a rejected child.
He was a rejected child. Very good.
When in a certain sense, that was Joseph.
So was Joseph, right? So.
And then why is it, speaking of like, when you mentioned about the Baal Shem Tov who saw someone who couldn't conceive, I mean, the mother of Shmuel HaNavi, it took her a while to conceive until she got him. But actually, all 3 of 4 of the mothers, Sarah, Rivka, and Rahel, also
Couldn't conceive
either. But Leah was the only one who conceived easily.
That's right. In fact, the Gemara says that when did they all conceive? They all conceived on Rosh Hashanah. Okay? They all
Did
conceived on Rosh Hashanah.
Also, Hannah
and
conceived
Chana.
in her?
And Chana.
Wow.
And Yosef HaTzadik was released from prison on Rosh Hashanah. So we see that Rosh Hashanah is a day in which that everything changes. It's a day in which everything is new. It's a day in which people who are barren conceive. And what are they conceiving with? They're conceiving with intimacy, with closeness to HaShem. Okay? Now, what is
So
what is it
Yitzchak,
about David?
Yaakov,
One second.
Yosef, and
What is it about David that allows him to become such a redemptive figure outside of the fact that he's alienated, he's out to pasture, he has a very unique story, they think he's a mamzer, right? There's a whole amazing story going on with David.
It goes back to Ruth. It goes all the way back. That's the amazing story.
Yeah, it goes even back before that.
Yeah, yes.
Before that, he came from all of the darkest places. The Midrash goes through all of the different ways. He came from incest, and he came from lies, and he came from cheating, and he came from all types of very, very dark places. And the Mashiach comes from that very dark place. But how does he change it all around? How does he make all the darkness of his life redemptive? What is David's book called? Tehillim. What makes David's book different than Moshe's book? He's just talking to God. He's talking to God. All of Tehillim is what Rabbi Nachman called Hitbodedut. What is Hitbodedut? It's something very simple. I sit alone with Hashem, or I go alone somewhere with Hashem, and I just talk to Him. That's all of Tehillim. David saying, thank you for this, thank you for that. David saying, Ad matai, until when are you going to help me? I can't take it anymore, right? It's a very intimate relationship. If you look at David's relationship with Hashem, it's very feminine. In fact, the Arizal says that what makes David messianic is that he has a totally female soul. So that Yitzchak Avinu also had a female soul. It's very unique and very unusual. But the reason why Yitzchak couldn't get married was because he had a female soul. And so that was the reason why it took him that many years to be able to find somebody. However, once
accepted him.
once the Akedah happened and Yitzchak was brought to sacrifice, so the Rizal says that when a person engages in the epitome of self-sacrifice, he can actually transform his soul. Because I have died, right? My old self has died. So his female self died. And he received a male soul at that point. And right after that story of the Akedah, you see immediately afterwards that he finds Rivka. Okay? Now you might ask, well then how did David marry so many women if he had a female soul? And the Arizal doesn't say it ever switched. In fact, Rav Yitzchak Ginsburg says it's bedavka, the fact that David has a female soul, that the Mashiach will have a female soul. It's for that very reason he will be able to bring the Geula. It's not going to be a problem for him. It's what's going to make him redemptive. Okay? King David says in Tehillim, Ani tefillah, I am prayer. I am speech. I am expression. In the language of Kabbalah, male represents potential. And female represents reality, right? You usually hear a story about men daydreaming at school when they were kids. A lot of daydreaming going on. Maybe we're still doing it right now. He's thinking about something. He's definitely not here in the class. He's also probably thinking about something, right? Yeah? What are they thinking about? Wow, I can't wait to get out of here. When's the shura going to be over, right? So we're daydreaming. Why? Because we live in the world of potential. Women are lemaisa. I want to see what you do. How am I going to know you love me? When you do this for me. If you don't do this for me, your love for me is like, okay, great, you say you love me, but I don't see it. Right? Words are not enough. I need to actually see it. It's actual. In Kabbalah, they explain that maleness represents potential. It's like seed. Right? What does a male give over to a woman? He gives over his seed. The seed represents potential. There's a million possibilities for children in that seed, but none of them are real. What does a woman do? She takes one of those possibilities and she makes it a reality. So she's limiting him, which is part of the danger in relationships, where a lot of times men feel like their wives are too constricting. But really that's what she's supposed to do. She's supposed to constrict him to make him real. That's why the Torah says it's not good for man to be alone. Why is it not good for man to be alone? Because if he's alone, he doesn't really exist. So many men feel like I could do anything. I could save the world, I could be in the army, I could be a painter, and I could be a musician, and I could be a movie star, and I could be a this, and I could be a that, but he's living in his grandma's basement. So when is that all going to change? When he gets married. You know why? Because his wife's going to tell him, but I need you to do one thing. I need that one thing to be able to pay our bills. So we have a roof over our head. When Rabbi Nachman's first wife passed away, he wanted to get remarried right away. So his Hasidim said to him, but you have a year of mourning. You don't have to do this right away. Right? And he really loved his first wife, Sasha. So,
A year of mourning for
Yeah.
a wife? That's only 1 month.
but really, it's you don't get over it. Yeah, halachically in that first month. But it takes about a year before you can actually move on from someone that you love so much. So he said, why do you want to get married right away? Don't you want to take a little bit of time? So Rabbi Nachman said, the Torah says not good for man to be alone. And I don't want to be not good. I want to be not good. Okay. Because she brings into reality. Geula is going to be Geula when it's real, not when it's potential anymore. And that comes through speech. Rabbi Nachman says that HaShem is always giving you the answers to your prayers. So if you can just close your eyes and imagine all these things that you've always wanted are being funneled down to you all the time, because HaShem is just unlimited Sheva. So then, but if I go back home, that thing's not there. My kid's still not married. My husband's still not speaking to me. I still have these health problems. I'm still struggling to figure out what I'm going to do at work. So that's great. Hashem's giving it to me all the time, but where is it? I don't see it. Rambam says that you need a vessel, because you need a vessel to be able to receive whatever he's giving you, right? It's like, I heard a story once of Rav David Aaron. He's actually the reason I'm Baal Tshuva. He wrote a book called The Secret Life of God. I read this book and it totally changed my life. And he speaks there about how he was taken to Israel when he was secular, and he ended up in a Hasidic shtibel. And there was a very big Hasidic master over there, and all of his thousands of Hasidim. And when he walked into this shtibel, the Hasidic master, who was a very short, very pious man, saw these two secular boys, and he called over to the Hasidim to bring it over. It's a little mafia-esque. So they came over and they just snatched up these kids and brought him to the front, and they had no idea what was going on. And all of a sudden, the Hasidic master, he takes out an apple and he goes like this to give him the apple. So he's putting out the apple, and the kids don't know what's going on. They have no idea what's happening. But when they're trying to move from the crowd, because this is weird, the Hasidim kept pushing them back in. So they really didn't know what to do. So one of the two boys couldn't take the anxiety of what's going on anymore. So he just put his hand out to rip the apple out of the Rebbe's hand, because maybe that's what he wants. He wants us to take the apple. It's like that, what was that karate movie from the 90s? It's like wax on, wax off. He's trying to show me what to do with this apple, okay? So he goes to take it, and the Rebbe very quickly just puts it away. So they think, then we're going to get to go now. And as they start to move, the Hasidim push them back in, and the Rebbe goes like this again with the apple. They don't know what to do. They go into Yeush, they go into despair, put their head down I don't know. And then all of a sudden the apple dropped in their hands. And he said, at that moment, I realized what he was trying to teach me. You can't take God. You have to receive God. You can't take blessing. You have to receive blessing. You need to be a vessel to be able to receive light. So Rabbi Nachman says that every word that comes out of your mouth is a keli, it's a vessel. And the more vessels that you make, the more you're going to be able to receive blessing. If you see all these different Breslov Hasidim that are popping up across the world and saying, I was in thousands and thousands of dollars a day and I got out, or I was addicted to gambling and I was able to make it out, or I struggled with depression and I was able to get out, and you ask any of them, well, what changed all that for you? You struggled with that for 20 years, for 30 years, for 40 years. What happened? And everyone is going to tell you, Hitbodedin. What did I do? I talked to Hashem about all of it. So on the one hand, you could see how that would be therapeutic, right? It would be therapeutic for me to talk every day about what's going on with me, that's for sure. But that's not going to change my physical reality. How is that going to actually change my debt? It's not going to give me money in my hands right now. And Rabbi Nachman says, yes, it will. Every single one of those words is a vessel for another $1, or for more healing, or for peace at home. Whatever it is that you need, Hashem's already giving it to you, but you need to be able to make a vessel. So, first way that we can make a more intimate relationship with Hashem, that we can have a more feminine year next year. Just like we want to be able to sit down and talk to our husbands, Hashem's also our husband. And He loves to hear from you. In fact, Rabbi Nachman says that, so to speak, He stops everything He's doing with everybody else when He sees that one of His children decides to sit down alone and talk to Him.
Or is Hashem our Father?
He's everything.
Okay.
He's your father, He's your brother, He's your mother.
Okay,
He's your
everything.
He's everything. And in different times, He wants you to relate to Him in different ways. When you do the Amidah, He wants you to call Him the King, right? Because that's good for you at that point. But then Rabbi Nachman says, but when you come to talk to Him alone, He can't be the king for you right now. He's got to be your best friend. Hashem wants you to experience Him in all different types of ways, but the feminine way, the redemptive way, is the way of, I'm talking to a dear friend who really cares about me. How should I speak to him? So you might think, Lashon HaKodesh, I'll speak in Hebrew. No, you shouldn't speak in Hebrew, Rabbi Nachman says. You should speak in your own language. How do you talk? What's your mother tongue? That's how you should speak, because that's what's real for you. Right? When you sit down with your spouse, you don't start speaking Lashon HaKodesh to them. You start speaking like when you guys were back in Brooklyn, and you have that little slang that you guys have with each other, right? Like that. That's how you need to talk. You want to feel that Hashem really loves you. You want to feel close with Him. Remember this. How can I feel close to someone that I don't talk to? How much time does Rabbi Nachman say is a good idea for you to talk to Him? He said at least an hour a day. Oh my gosh, it sounds like a lot, no? Talk an hour a day. But if you stop thinking about God as some type of metaphysical abstract reality and you just think about Him as like a partner or a friend, that makes sense, right? If I speak to like someone said, what am I going to talk to him for an hour about? I said, you just spoke to me for 3 hours about nothing. Why do you think you can't talk to Hashem for an hour? Because you're looking at Him in one way. There's a time for that, but He also wants you to look at Him in another way. All different times for all different things. First way is speech, okay? 2, we need to have things in our life which cultivate that feeling of intimacy in the way of knowledge. Meaning, there are certain forms of Torah learning that are very essential, that are very important, but they're not intimate, right? If you go to someone, let's say that they are what's considered Talmid Chacham, they're very expert in the oral Torah and very expert in the Shulchan Aruch. That is amazing, but it's not intimate. It's not intimate. So what is the Torah of intimacy? We just said this before. It's the Torah of Chassidut. I once heard someone try to explain, like in a nutshell, what is Chassidut? So maybe this is more relevant to my generation, and Shmuel knows what I'm talking about. But if, when you get invited to go to a party, right, let's say I went to college in America before my religious life started. And before we actually went to the bar, we had what's called a pregame. It's very not healthy. I mean, it's part of American culture. It's just drink until you drop, right? But there's a real chokhmah in the pregame. What's the chokhmah in the pregame? Save money. Right. The chokhmah in the pregame is that I don't feel comfortable getting to the bar unless I taste something that's already there. Think about it. What am I doing when I'm drinking a little bit before I go? I want to relax so that I feel comfortable getting to the bar. But that's the whole point of being in the bar, is so that place I'm going to feel relaxed. But to get there, I need to just take a little bit of a drink first. But that drink that you're taking is actually from the bar. So one Breslov Chassid was trying to explain that we're trying to have Olam Haba. We're trying to get to this place, we call it the bar, where it's going to be really enjoyable, a lot of fun. We're going to finally be able to put our hair down, just relax, no more toiling anymore. Okay, but to get to the bar, you have to take a shot first. You have to take a taste from what's going to be in the bar to get you to just relax enough so you can get there. Or to give you enough chizuk, to give you enough encouragement, to give you enough life force to actually be able to pass this very narrow bridge from here to there. So that shot is Chassidut. The Baal Shem Tov's Torah is the Torah of Mashiach. In fact, Rabbi Nachman said the only difference between me and Mashiach is that everyone will listen to him. So what's implicit in what he's saying is that that Torah is already here, it's just nobody is listening to it. That's why Rabbi Nachman said that when Mashiach comes, everyone's going to be in a big tumult. This is what he's telling us to do? To talk to Hashem? What about Talmud Torah? What about all these different things? I didn't expect it to be this Baal Tshuva coming off the boat, dressed like this with his long hair and his, right? And he goes, yeah, man, we just got to talk to Hashem. Like, nobody's going to respond that guy's the Mashiach. Nobody's going to believe him. But Rabbi Nachman says that my students will not be thrown into a tumult when the Mashiach comes because they've been tasting that wine for a long time. Won't be unusual for them. So, a second way that we can make a more feminine year next year, to have a more intimate relationship with Hashem, is to have one time every day, even if it's only for 10 minutes, that I learn the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. Try to find the Hasidic master which speaks to you the most. For some people, it's the Baal Tanya, the creator of Chabad Hasidus. For some people like me and Batia, it's Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. For some people, it's the Baal Shem Tov himself. Some people, it's Rav Levi Berdichev, the guardian of the Jewish people, the one who fought for every single Jew, no matter who they were, right? Everyone has their own root in their neshama. But it's very important that every day you fill up. Because to talk, right, the Gemara says that a person who's extending his heart, it leads to heartache, right? If you're constantly every day asking Hashem, so that leads to heartache. So how do you fill the heartache? Rabbi Nachman says, through Torah. But you need your Torah. And you need your Torah of intimacy. So that's the second way. Third way is you have to think to yourself, is there a place where I feel more intimate? Right? Like sometimes, like if I'm in the car or we're in traffic or we're like stuck in a line, no matter how much I want to be intimate with my spouse, it doesn't feel intimate right now. Or my kids are like crawling on my legs and they're screaming and they're yelling like, I love you and I love him and this is all good, but I can't feel intimate right now. Right? There's a really big concept in the Torah of makom, of a space. In fact, the Torah encourages you that when you find a space where you pray and you feel comfortable in that place, you feel intimate in that place, you're not allowed to leave that place. You have to keep going to that same place. There was I heard once Rav Daniel Katz, he was telling a story when in Uman, about when he first moved to Israel and he got a house here, and he went into his backyard to go do Hibodadut, and he saw a guy there doing Hibodadut in his backyard. So he didn't want to interrupt him, but on the other hand, he's in his property. So he said to him, "Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Are you lost? Do you think you're somewhere else?" He goes, "No, I'm talking to Hashem." So he goes, "That's great." He goes, "But you're in my house. You're in my backyard." He said, "This is my makom for tefillah. I'm not allowed to move from this place." So even though he probably was unnerved a little bit, he learned something very deep, how important it was to this Jew that I won't leave from this place even if I'm trespassing onto your property. Because I need this space that I feel comfortable, that I feel intimate with you. I know for me personally, to go to Yerushalayim and to be at the Kotel, something happens to me. I feel much more open there. I feel like I can enter into my emotions much easier over there. Some people, it's not there. It's in the forest. For some people, it's not in the forest. It's in their bedroom, right? But everyone has their own place, and that place needs to be cultivated. That place needs to be visited. as much as you can. Rabbi Nachman has a story, the first of his 13 stories. He told his students that after all of these years, I realized that my Torah is not affecting you. It's not changing you the way that I hoped it would. So I'm going to have to start telling you stories. Now, if you can imagine these grown men who actually happen to be Kabbalists, and they were expert in all of Shas and Poskim, to hear from their Rebbe that they are going to be downgraded to children's stories now, I'm sure they were not so thrilled and excited. However, those stories actually contain Torah, which is even higher than the normative Torah that we receive itself, but it is constricted within these stories so that you can grasp them. The first of these stories, which is probably the most famous of the stories, is called The Lost Princess. And in this story, the king has a daughter who he really loves. They have a very intimate relationship. In fact, he has 6 sons, he has 1 daughter, but it never speaks about his relationship with the 6 sons. He loves spending every day with his daughter. And it says that they're like frolicking around. I never knew what that word actually meant and what that looks like, but it sounds very intimate. Every day they're frolicking with each other. And one day, the daughter gets him upset. Probably because they're so intimate, she said something he didn't like, right? It wasn't fitting. He's the dad, he's the king. And he said that no good one should take you away. And then, like every guy, after we get mad, we regret it, we feel bad, we calm down, we say we're sorry, but when he came back in the room, she was gone. And he couldn't find her anywhere. And he got so distressed. And he's looking all over the kingdom and he can't find his daughter anywhere who he loves so much. And he's asking all his wise men where she is and where he could find her, and we don't know. All of a sudden, his best friend, the viceroy, comes and says, I'm going to go look for her. No matter how long it takes, no matter where I have to go, I'm going to find her for you, I'm going to bring her back to you. I just need a horse, I need some money, and I need a servant. And he goes on his way. And the story goes that he's traveling through mountains and through deserts and through forests to try and find this girl. Finally finds her in the place of no good. Just like he said, I want the place that no good one should take you away. That's where she ended up. So he said, how can I get you out of here? It was a very important point. She said, there's one way. If you stay here for 1 year and every single day you find a place that you go to and you yearn to take me out of here. If you do that every single day for 1 year, at the end of the year, you can remove me from this place. So we see again, there's a hint here that Geula can come only in the merit of yearning, of intimacy, of a place that I keep going to that place and I get out everything that's in my heart. Everything. Right? It says in Ashrei, HaShem answers everyone who calls to him in truth. Why do you add that second part? I was good without that condition. I like the first part. HaShem answers everybody. Good. Oh, but there's a little bit of a stipulation. I'll answer you when what you're saying to me is genuine. When you really mean what you say, I'll answer you. It's your truth. So Rabbi Nachman, this is another point, that within your speech, it's not enough just to talk to him. You have to say the truth. Say your truth. Right? Sometimes people come up and they go, and this is good. There's a time for this. Thank you, Hashem, that I have eyes and I can see. Thank you, Hashem, that I have lungs and I can breathe. Thank you, Hashem, that I'm still alive, I'm still kicking. Thank you, Hashem, whatever it is. You have a lot of things to be thankful for, and you should definitely say thank you. That also builds intimacy. Appreciation is very important. But there's also a part of me is like, I need help. I really need help. I feel totally lost. I feel really confused. I feel unbelievable angst. I feel a big hole inside of me and I don't know where to get it filled. I feel like every progress that I'm making, the next day it's gone, or maybe I even regress. Are you talking about that? Because that's your truth. Right? In the first parak of Tehillim, King David says that I am dwelling in the Torah day and night, in Hashem's Torah meditating. So which one is it? Is he in his Torah or is he in Hashem's Torah? The answer is both. There's Hashem's truth, but there's your truth. And you have to be able to be attuned to both of those truths. So on the one hand, I'm striving to become so holy and so pure and all of these things, but it can't take away from the truth of where you're at right now. And you need to be able to speak out that truth. Rabbi Nachman says in the 9th lesson of Likutei Moharan that when a person comes to pray to Hashem, this is the time of the biggest bilbul. you'll notice you'll have all of these extraneous thoughts pop up when you come to pray, all of these different things that are totally unrelated or even destructive thoughts, or even thoughts which are damaging to your self-confidence, right? All these things just start popping up when I come to pray. Why are they coming when I come to pray? Because Rabbi Nachman teaches that there are sparks of godliness that can only be released when a Jew prays. It's the greatest form of that. And so, how do you know that those sparks of godliness are trapped there? Because they're trapped within those negative thoughts. It's a very deep thing. We could think about it on our own time, okay? So, but he says, how do you break through those besieging thoughts, which he calls clouds? How do you break through darkness? You need a little bit of light. What's the light? There's no light besides Hashem. And the Midrash says that Hashem's stamp is emet, is the truth. So wherever you're going to find me, it's in the place of truth. Now when we usually think about this, we think about the Torah. But the Torah is only one expression of Hashem's truth. There's also your truth. Rabbi Nachman says that when a Jewish man or woman comes to speak to Hashem alone, in private, in his own words, like speaking to his best friend, he will actually, or she will actually experience Ruach HaKodesh. She will literally intuit what it is that Hashem wants from them while speaking, but only when they're speaking truth, because Hashem is only in the place of truth. So let's say you're in this situation. Let's say after this, Bezrat Hashem, you're inspired a little bit, and you make a time tomorrow. You say, honey, give me my calendar, and then you make like a little bit of time. Okay, an hour is too much for me. Maybe I'll spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes tomorrow trying this thing out, experimenting. Or just talk to Hashem, okay? So I go in that place, and let's say I get there, I'm like, I don't know my truth. I don't know exactly what that is. I don't even know how to verbalize what that is. I know I don't feel good, but I don't know why. That's probably why people go see therapists. But I'm here with you right now, so what am I going to do? So Rabbi Nachman says, talk about that. That's your truth. I don't know what my truth is. That's the truth. Whatever the truth is for you, that's what you need to speak about, because it's in that place that you're going to find God. I have a student, when I did my first class with Gedalia Fenster in Miami. So he's a Breslov, he lives in Florida. He struggled a lot with different things growing up. He found Rabbi Nachman's teachings, and it caused a big transformation in his life. And now he is owner of many substance abuse clinics, which he runs. And he asked me when I went there, because I used to be a substance abuse clinician, if I want to come run a group there. I hadn't run a group in years, and I had a flight to catch. But, we spoke about men, not so beseder, right? I'm living in the world of imagination. Anything's possible. Okay, so maybe I could fit in a group really quick before I go on the airplane. If I called my wife, she probably would tell me, no, you don't have enough time. But I didn't do that. I went to the substance abuse clinic, and I'm sitting with all of these people and talking to them. On the one hand, obviously, I have the experience of being a clinician, but on the other hand, I actually was in a place like that myself. So I have a lot of experience with all of that. And I just spoke to them from my heart. I just started to talk to them about things that changed my life, how I got out of a place like this. One of the people who was there, you would never know he's Jewish. He had a long beard. He was very tall. He looked Hispanic. He was dark-skinned. He had a hat. He looked like a hipster. I don't know if you guys know what a hipster is, but he looked like a hipster. And the first group that I ran, he was really locked in. He was asking me questions. He was the whole time. And then after the group was over, I went to do one more group. They asked me if I wanted to run another one. So I'm like, okay, good, that's good. I was really into it. So he brought me to another place. I started running, and he comes again. He takes me to the side. He goes, David, do you have a minute to talk before you go? I said, yeah, sure. He goes, I know you probably don't realize this because I don't look like it, but I'm actually Jewish. And I go, really? And he said, yeah, my mom's Jewish. And he said, I've been in the substance abuse clinic. I have an addiction to heroin. This is multiple times that I've been getting treatment, trying to get better. He said, now I'm trying again in this place. He said, every single time that they have these sessions where they have group therapy sessions, I can't stay for more than a few minutes before I get antsy and I have to leave. He said, you're the first person I ever heard give a group that I was interested in. I stayed the whole time. And not only that, I actually came to the second group that they wanted me to come to. Usually after that first group, I just ditch the place and I go and do my thing. And now I'm going to 2 groups in a row. So then he said to me, can you tell me a little bit more about this Hitbodedut thing that you were talking about? And I said, yeah, sure. And he said, whatever was getting a little, whatever. He took my number down. He lost it. He asked Gedalia for it. Gedalia gave it to him. He gave me a call. I came back to Queens. He gave me a phone call. He goes, hey, David, this is blah, blah, blah. Sorry I didn't get back to you right away after we spoke. I lost your number. And I just want to tell you that I did my first Hitbodedut while in the clinic. I went outside. They gave me time outside. And I spoke to Hashem for 40 minutes. And he said I broke down crying in the middle. And he said that I realized that after all of this time, the thing that I've been missing in my life is a relationship with God. And I thought it was because of my parents, and I thought it was because of my circumstances, and I thought it was because of this. And I realized as I was talking to him, which I never did, I didn't even know that you can just sit down and just talk to him. I realized how big of a lacking this is in my life. To talk to God, to be close to God, to have a relationship with God. Baruch Hashem, I think he continued that for a period of time. He got out of there. He actually started to do tshuva. He went to Eretz Yisrael to go to a Baal Tshuva yeshiva. We celebrated his 1 year of sobriety together when he was here in Israel. We went out for a meal together. And what changed everything for him? One was that he spoke to Hashem. Because how can you be close to someone you don't talk to? But not just that he spoke to him. He said his truth. Whatever that was. I'm scared. I feel alone. I feel abandoned. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this place. I don't know how I'm going to get clean. Right? And everyone's addicted to something. Maybe you never went to a clinic, but if you're watching your phone for hours, that's also an addiction. If you can't stop eating that candy that you eat every day, that's also an addiction. Right? Everyone has an addiction. Everyone has a chesron, and everyone has a lacking. That's what makes us human. Hashem says, open your mouth and let me fill it. It's a pasuk in Tehillim. Open your mouth and let me fill it. Why can't he just fill it? Because you need a vessel. You need a vessel. So this is the final point. And I'm going to go over them again, and then I'm going to take 10 minutes of questions if it's okay with you guys. Okay? I'm usually speaking in front of a computer at this point. It's very lonely. It's a very miserable existence. When I signed up for teaching, I wasn't anticipating that COVID would kick in, and then all of a sudden I would be, speaking to robots for the rest of my life. But it's really nice to be sitting in front of human beings, people, and talking to you. And therefore, I'd love to have 10 minutes just for me to hear from another person. My wife can't take me talking anymore, and so, I have to have
Is your
something.
wife on the screen back there?
This is my wife, yes, she's right here.
Oh!
You see the
okay.
shape? She's very feminine shape over here. It's got the... No. She's definitely not going to be watching this. She hears me talk more than enough. But here are the 4 points, okay, to bring it. Because even though these things are very deep that we spoke about and they're very personal, it has to be practical, right? The Mishnah in Avot says the main thing is action. Learning is good, but it only changes your life when you do what you learn. So learning in this case is like mail, like we spoke about before. It's like a potential change in your life. Every time you learn Torah, you have a new potential transformation in your life because the Torah is a higher truth than the one that we're living with. It's great. It's redemptive. However, when does it actually, when I do what I learn, that's the feminine part of it. Rabbi Nachman says that when men and female are equal, there's going to be Geula. Very modern, no? But what it really means for us is, when I'm not just learning, but I'm doing what I'm learning, that's when I'm going to have a personal redemption in my life. So what were the 4 main points, how to make a more intimate relationship with Hashem in the year of femininity, in the year of Padeh, in the year of redemption? Geula B'ezrat Hashem. 1, to talk to Hashem like I'm speaking to a dear friend in my own language. Have a time each day that I do this. And if you feel like this is weird, or this is too modern, this is not in the Torah, I never saw it brought anywhere, just look back and see, when Abraham spoke to Hashem and he was advocating for the people in stone, was that a formulated prayer by the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah? The answer is no. What was he doing? He was just talking to Hashem. When it says that Yitzhak was the Suach L'Sadeh, that he was conversing with Hashem, doesn't say he was talking to him, it says he was conversing with him. Conversing is lashon of friendship. What was he doing then? He was talking to him. All of Tehillim, what is that? It wasn't scripted. Nobody gave him the script before he went to go do it. He wasn't reading from a book. He was just talking, and afterwards recorded it like a diary. It's all over Torah. Who do we learn to pray from? We learn from Chana, it says in the Gemara. We learn from Chana how to pray. And the whole story of Chana, you go back, look at it, it's unbelievable chizuk. She's just talking to him. Hashem, I want to have kids. You're saying that I can't have kids. I see because I don't have any kids.
She prayed in the Temple Mount.
Yeah. Not only that, she was like...
The priest Eli was looking at her.
Like a lawyer. She was going back and forth with him. Oh, you don't want me to have kids? Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I learned that there's a halacha that if a person is suspected of adultery, then they get tried. And when they get tried, if they're proven innocent, you bless them with kids. So here's what's going to happen. I am going to look like I'm going to have adultery, which sounds crazy, I know, please forgive me, but I really need to have kids. They're going to try me, they're going to see that I am innocent, and then you have to give me a kid because it's your Torah. And that's exactly what happened. And the Shulchan Aruch and the Gemara says, guess where we learn how to pray from? We learn how to pray from her.
Yeah.
When's the last time you spoke to Hashem like that? Usually my head is down, I'm not talking to him like that, right? But Hashem loves it. Rabbi Nachman says that Hashem loves when you speak to him like that. Because what did she want? She wanted what he wanted.
Yep, and she was trying, and then her husband Elkanah was like, is the husband good enough? She was his favorite wife.
Right?
And he tried to help her conceive, and it still wasn't working. He didn't give up, but she just prayed that Hashem would open her womb so that she could conceive. And she did conceive with her own husband, but Hashem then opened her womb so that it would work.
That's right. And so we're learning a very important lesson from Chana. Hashem wants to hear what's going on with you. And if you want to know, does Hashem want what I want? Because I don't want to keep talking to him about it if Hashem doesn't want it from me. That's a waste of time, no? Or I don't want to overstep my boundaries. It's very simple. How did Chana know that Hashem wanted Chana to have kids? Because of mitzvah in the Torah. If I'm asking for shalom bayit with my spouse, I'm asking to want what Hashem wants. If I'm asking to be able to support my family, well, that's a mitzvah in the Torah to be able to support my family. So I'm asking for what Hashem wants. So I can always feel good about that. If I keep pounding the pavement for this thing, but I want to make sure Hashem wants this thing, just look in the Torah. Does Hashem tell you, I want you to go do this thing? If these answers yes, but you just haven't been able to, you should feel really good about advocating for yourself. Because after all, Hashem asked you to go do this thing. Right? So one is to talk to Him. Two, have a time every day that you learn the Torah of intimacy, Chassidus. And if you guys need recommendations for different books of different Chassidic masters, what would be like a good introduction, what would be in English, like whatever it is, I'm here, and Bezrat Hashem, I could help you in any way.
Also with Sarah, Rivka, and Rahel, they didn't pray as hard, but something happened which got them pregnant. And all four of them, you said, got pregnant with their first.
Right.
And gave birth at Rosh Hashanah. So I don't know, did Rahel give birth to Benjamin or just Yosef on Rosh Hashanah?
Yosef was conceived on Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, okay. And so he was conceived then, and so was Yitzhak, and that's also when Yaakov and Asav were conceived too.
And Shmuel.
And Shmuel was conceived there, but since Yaakov and Asav are twins, obviously he was conceived with him.
Right. Very good. So we have speech, we have the Torah of Chassidus, every time, every day, a little bit. It's good, like when you wake up in the morning, you have a cup of coffee, have a little bit of that Torah. It's a good way to start your day. 3, what's a place that you feel like you can cultivate more intimacy with Hashem? Find the space, whatever that space is, and have a time, maybe once a month, maybe once a week, maybe once a day, depending on how intimate you want your relationship to be, right? If you think that your relationship should be more intimate, if you have a date night every night, so go for it. If you feel like one night a week is enough, so go for it. If you feel like one day at the hotel every month is enough, go for it. But you have to make steps to cultivate intimacy. It doesn't happen naturally. And then the last part is that in your speech, you have to say the truth. Even if it's the scariest thing in the world, even if you never actually said it to Hashem, even if you feel like you might offend him. So the Gemara says that Hashem doesn't judge a person who's in pain, and we're not allowed to either. So if on the tzad that you feel like you're saying something maybe is, I don't know if this is the right thing to say, so again, just say Hashem, like I'm in pain. Please don't judge me, but I really need to say this. Does anybody have any questions from this class? How to make a more intimate relationship with Hashem, how to practically bring this into your life? Any questions?
I would just add,
Sure.
I'm not being disrespectful,
No?
that somebody I know who was, and her girlfriend wanted to work on that. They felt that they were frustrated in their lives and all the complications of life and everything. And they decided that in this direction, what they would do, because they're not in the same city and it's not so easy to be on the phone in a complicated life. And so every day now, they, towards the end of the day, whenever it's communion for each of them, sends a list of the 10 things that they are thankful for from Hashem to each other, so that they're sharing with each other. And there are some days when the 10 is easy, but there are some days when life was just so challenging that they have to actually search. And sometimes it seems like such a minor thing to be thankful for. But in my own life, which has been challenging, and some people don't understand how I've made it through it, but I had a mother, thank God bless her memory, that was a very good example for living through difficult times. And I found that just, like you said, communicating with Hashem and being thankful for the things you do have, even if there are things that you don't have, then the closeness gets stronger, and truer friendships too. When you're thankful for something and then angry with the friend, or especially if you're angry with the friend, you're thankful for whatever about the relationship, then it brings you closer, and more easily you can be at peace, and you can make up, and you can ask for something sometimes.
Absolutely.
And things like that. So
Absolutely. I also want to just add something, just based on what you were saying. I don't know why it came to my mind, but I have a men's chabura and a women's chabura, and there's a men's group for men, women's group for women on WhatsApp, and we are talking on there about how to apply these different ideas that we speak about in our life. Rabbi Nachman stressed this idea of sichot averim, to have a time each day that you speak to friends about your spiritual journey, and it's not ancillary to the journey, but it's actually essential to being able to grow, besides the fact that it's less lonely. And I was explaining how I spoke to Hashem in a certain way one time, and one of the students there was saying, like, I don't know how to talk to Hashem like that. It's like, it's very raw, and I never spoke to anybody like that. So I told him, I said, well, first of all, I was an atheist for most of my life. And when I started talking to Hashem, it wasn't like that. But it cultivated, and it became like that after years of every day taking an hour a day of talking to him. At that point, I felt more comfortable speaking, because when you really rely on him completely, you feel more open to ask for what you need, right? Like if I am, let's say I'm saying, Hashem, please help me with my work. But then I spend the next 16 hours going online and sending out applications and doing all these different forms of hishtadlut, where I'm saying, Hashem, I want to rely on you, but none of my actions are actually corroborating the fact that I trust that you're going to help me with this thing. Now, obviously, there's a concept of hishtadlut, and you have to physically do things in order to make things happen. But on the other hand, we do know when am I really relying on Hashem, and when am I kind of just like, like the joke where he's driving down there's a parking, he doesn't have parking, and then he says, Hashem, please, I need parking, please help me to find parking, and then all of a sudden a spot opens, and he goes, oh, actually, don't worry about it, I found one, and then he goes in the spot, right? So with us as well, I remember a couple of years ago, by Rabbi Nachman, it's a big thing to be by him for Rosh Hashanah in Uman. So Bezrat Hashem, I'll be there this year for the 4th time, going for Rosh Hashanah, and the 6th time Bezrat Hashem, just in general. It's been a big life changer for me. And I remember when I first got to Israel, I bought a ticket. And all of a sudden, right before the flight, my wife asked me, David, do you have documents from Israel to go to Uman? I said, what do I need that for? I have my American passport. I said, yeah, but you don't live in America anymore. You're now in Israel. It's like, no, it's fine. It's like when someone says something to you and you're like, you don't even want to confront the thing because it might be a big problem. So you're like, no, everything's fine. But then you sit on it a little bit and then I'm like, is that a problem? I hope it's not a problem. So I texted somebody who was very connected over there. He's like, yeah, you need that document. And oh my gosh, I started breaking out in sweat. I'm like, I spent $1,000 on the ticket. And more than that, it's very important for me to go. It's something I really need. So, and I also wasn't used to the Israeli government and all the different political, trying to do things. In America, I was used to, I have some problem. I make an appointment. They give me an appointment that week. I go, and the appointment that's taken care of. Here, it could be a few years before you see them. And then when you go, they're like, yeah, you need this thing, and this isn't the right office. You're going to have to make an appointment there. And you go, and you see there's not an appointment for another year and a half. It's like, you really need God here, So I was like, okay, so I did a last-ditch effort to visit the U.S. Embassy in Israel near me, see if they'll let me in, and I can plead for that document. And I got there, and I speak not fluent Hebrew. And this guy is sitting there, and he's very all business, and he doesn't seem like the most compassionate person. And I go up to him, and I said, can I come in? And he said, do you have an appointment? I said, no. And he goes, no, you can't come in. So I said, no, but you don't understand. And I started to go on this whole Megillah about what happened to me and how I didn't know. And he's like, you don't have an appointment, you can't get in. And when people saw me, pleading with him, they started to plead for me in Hebrew. I said, to the guy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be my divine intervention, they're going to get on and then he's going to let me in. And he heard what they said and he said, no, he doesn't have an appointment, he can't come in. So now I'm leaving there and it hits me. And it might not sound like a big thing if you're not in that world, but for me, to not go to Uman for Rosh Hashanah is like a killer. It really is it's really a killer. And so I'm walking back to my car and it hits me, I'm not gonna go. And I'm so hurt. And I get in the car and I just start crying. And I said, Hashem, and it was a very raw moment and I didn't try to speak, it just kind of came out of me. And I start to say over and over again, Hashem, every day I fight for you. I need you to fight for me. And I kept saying it over and over. I didn't know where it was coming from. And tears are coming down from my eyes, and I'm saying, fight for me, and my voice is getting louder and louder and louder and louder over and over, and all of a sudden I get a phone call from my wife. And she said, David, did you leave the embassy yet? I said, no. She goes, don't move. My dad knows somebody who runs that embassy over there, and he's trying to get in contact with them to see if they're going to let you in. Now, just so you know, my wife is Yemenite. Her dad is from a moshav next to the airport. He's not the most well-connected person in the state of Israel. And so for him to know the guy who runs the U.S. embassy over here is a very unlikely situation. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like, first of all, I'm so emotionally spent from me just like, HaShem, you have to help me, you have to fight for me, you have to fight for me, I need you to help me. To get a phone call that my wife's dad may be able to get me into the embassy, I'm just don't know what's going on. I'm just sitting there and I'm waiting and I don't know what to do. And then she says, go back in there and tell him this. I walk back in. He goes, what are you doing back here? I said, the president of Israel told me. I'm just kidding. It's not, you gotta let me in. And he goes, okay, so come in. And now I'm sitting there, I don't have the ticket, and everyone's waiting there, and for hours I'm sitting, I don't even know what's gonna happen, and they're taking everybody, and now the place is gonna close. And then they're like, well, who's this guy? And then I tell them, and they bring me over, and I tell them the situation, I don't know what's gonna happen here. Literally within 30 seconds, they printed out a passport for me, or like a temporary thing, say from this date to this date, which were the exact dates of my flight, you're allowed to go to that destination only and come back on that day. This is yours. I said, I can use this works, like this is a real thing, and like I can get into the country, come back. So yeah, I walked out of there and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to Uman. Okay, why did I tell you that whole story? Because it took me years to be able to speak to HaShem like that. It didn't happen in one day. So when you come to actually start to have that connection, there's no pressure. You just speak. And as time goes on, you'll start to feel more comfortable. Just like kids, your kids, if they talk to you not so much, you have a hard time asking you for help. But if they speak to you every single day and they're always talking to you about what's going on with them, then when they need you at 2 o'clock in the morning and they're in some undangerous place, they're gonna call you and say, I need you, Dad. Right? Same thing. Any other questions?
When you're davening, when you're doing Yibonah and the Kotel,
Yeah.
you're doing it very quietly so
Yeah.
that we can hear you?
So the thing is that like I'm kind of like a demonstrative person, so I don't necessarily have as much of a it's not as big of a barrier for me to be able to speak, even if I know people hear me, probably because I know that they don't understand English. So I try to pick a spot. Right, yeah. So it's either they don't, which doesn't sound like they do, because if they did, they probably listen more to what I'm saying and they wouldn't keep davening. Or they do, and I'm never going to see them again, and then it will never make a difference. But that's not everybody. Not everybody feels comfortable doing that, right? So for me, that's why it works. If they were all English speakers and I knew they could understand me, I wouldn't be as loud. And but there's also, like when you speak enough, then you don't always have to speak as loud to be able to get it across. In the beginning, it's important to start to develop that relationship. But when you do it enough, you can even speak quietly. Like Rabbi Nachman says that the loudest scream you can make is a completely silent scream, where you're only screaming in your own mind. So what does that even look like? I have no idea. But it sounds very loud, and yet it's so loud that nobody hears you. Okay, so that like that next time. Any other questions?
I just want to say one
Yeah.
thing. I'll stand over here so people can see me. That when I do hit Bodulu, so I'll show you where I do it if anyone's interested. But what I do is I close my eyes and I breathe deeply a number of times, like kind of like a little meditating. And then I begin talking by thanking HaShem for all different kinds of things. And then things just start happening and words start coming out of my mouth that I don't even know how they came into my mouth, but it's like HaShem is putting words in my mouth. And like the rabbi was saying, sometimes you can get to a point where you feel like you're getting answers and they're coming out of your mouth even. And it's really quite a remarkable thing to do when you start doing it every single day. And when I started to do it, I started about 12 years ago, but I did not start with an hour. I started I was actually taking Shmu to his guitar lessons, and I was waiting for him in the car, and I was like, there were no, I didn't have a phone that you could look into, you go on the internet with, so I was just sitting in the car, and I thought, well, I guess this is a good time. Okay, HaShem, here I am. That's kind of how I started. And it built up gradually over the years, but now I'm pretty regularly, maybe once in a while if my grandchildren visit and they wake up early with me and then I don't have that time, but it's every day for at least an hour. And it's so important to have that relationship with HaShem. It's not the same as if like when you're walking around talking to HaShem all day long. That's different, you can do that. But when you're sitting down for an hour with your eyes closed, you can get into a very deep state and have really incredible conversations with HaShem. I just wanted to say that.
I have a question for you. I don't know if you want to answer it, but how does going to Uman for you help you to develop that feminine aspect?
Sure, it's a great question. Yeah. Rabbi Nachman said that every tzaddik has a portion of Torah which he is rooted in the most. So for somebody, it's going to be, let's say, Torah Sheba'al Peh, the Gemara. Say for another person, it's going to be a certain Chag, or maybe it's going to be like a Shabbos Jew, you know? Rabbi Nachman said that my whole inyan is Rosh Hashanah. And if you learn anything about Rabbi Nachman, he is like the epitome of newness. They even said that every time that they saw him, you know, it's almost like a movie, like in Jekyll and Hyde, you know, like he was completely new. They said he was never the same. Every time that they saw him, he was totally new. And when you learn his teachings, even if you learn them over and over again, they will never register as the same anytime. You'll always see them as new. He was really a chidush, he was really a novelty. And so his main mission, he said, was Rosh Hashanah, which is a new year, right? Hashanah comes from the word shena, which means sleep. It's old. Rosh is the beginning, which means it's new. We're going to take something old and we're going to make it new. That's Rosh Hashanah. So when I go to Uman, first of all, you know, I was telling my secular best friend about like what it's like over there. I said in the religious world, it's a really unique thing to have guys from all across the world. Nobody's judging each other. Everyone, there's like there's no power dynamic. It's not like this guy's the rabbi and this guy's the student, or this guy is rich and this guy's, nobody cares. Like when everyone goes there, everyone just wants to get closer to Hashem, and there's a lot of friendship and there's a lot of happiness and there's a lot of genuinity and there's a lot of amazing conversations that take place there. And he told me, David, you know, it's not just unique to the religious Jewish world, it's just unique, period. There's really nothing like that. So that's the first thing. It's just being in an experience where you can be yourself. You don't have to be in any type of role anymore. And nobody's looking at you a certain way. Like you're gonna see a lot of people in Uman that they have tattoos all over their bodies. They have earrings, right? They have long ponytails. And why are they going to Uman for Rosh Hashanah? Because they feel comfortable. And why do they feel comfortable? Because one of the things that Rabbi Nachman used to say, that what does a real tzaddik do? A real tzaddik is able to make people who feel very far from Hashem, to let them know that they're actually very close. And he helps people to see, who feel that they're already very close, that they're actually very far. And so you have all of these different types of people convening in one space. And so it's like equalizing. The guy who's learning all the time, who really feels like he's done something, he goes there and he sees, I haven't really done anything. And that's really healthy for him. And then the one who feels like I have no shaykhus to Hashem at all, he doesn't care about me, he doesn't love me, I don't keep any of the mitzvot, I feel very, very far, and then I realize I'm actually very close, right? So wherever you're holding on that spectrum at any given time, you go there and you feel what you need to feel. So that's part of it. Another part of it is that Rabbi Nachman said that when you go to visit the kever of a tzaddik, you're in Eretz Yisrael mamish. What does that mean, you're in Eretz Yisrael mamish? They asked one of Rabbi Nachman's Hasidim, how could you possibly leave Israel? Because people had started making aliyah. How could you possibly leave Israel to go to Chutz La'aretz for Rosh Hashanah? That's a crazy thing to do. right? Breslovers are very religious people. How could you do that? He said, what are you talking about? I'm not leaving Eretz Yisrael to go to Chutz La'aretz. I'm leaving Eretz Yisrael to go to Eretz Yisrael. What is Eretz Yisrael? Abraham was looking for Hashem, and he couldn't find him. And Hashem said to him, I need you to leave the place that you're in and go to the place I'm going to show you. And it was the land of Israel. That doesn't just mean that the land of Israel is a physical space. It means whatever place that Hashem is in, that's called the land of Israel. The Gemara says that when you live outside the land, it's like you don't have a God. And when you live inside the land, it's like you have a God. Why? Because outside of the land, I don't experience Him. In this place, that I have a deep, resonant relationship with Him, I'm in the land of Israel. Now, when a person goes to a kever of a tzaddik, of any tzaddik, you'll see that you feel certain things. You experience certain things. Certain things come over you that you didn't know, right? So that's part of the intimacy, is having this deep experience in that space. Like, I'll just tell you a totally random story. It's a true story. There was a person who actually, it sounds very bad, so just kind of wait till the end of the story. But there was a person who was Jewish, who was secular, who lived in the land of Israel. And he was into all types of gangs and all types of, not such kosher things. And he even, at some point, ended up running a prostitution ring. And so he was very far off the map. He certainly wasn't going to shul every day to daven shachris, okay? One day, his dad came to him and told him, I want to go visit Europe. I want to go to Ukraine. Can you come with me? So, a lot of times this happens with Sephardic people, that even if they're not Shomer Mitzvot, they have a lot of honor for their parents. And so he said, sure, Dad, I'll come with you. I'm sure his dad had no idea any of the things that he was involved with, that his son was the most wanted man in the country. But he came with him. And when he got to Ukraine, they said, okay, we're going to stop by Uman now. He goes, what's in Uman? He said, Rabbi Nachman's in Uman. He goes, why would you stop there? And he goes, just come with me. Like, okay, fine. So as he's getting out of the car, they're calling him and telling him, listen, we're going to make that deal now. You need to be at the thing when they're paying for the girls and bringing them in. And he said, I'm sorry, I just need a few minutes. He goes with his dad to the kever of Rabbi Nachman. And his dad is getting emotional by the kever, and he tells his son, touch the kever. And he said, I'm okay over here, it's okay. And he said, just, why do you, it's okay, just touch it. And he goes, fine. And he goes over and he puts his hand on the kever. I heard this firsthand from somebody who knows this person very well. Everything he had done in his life started rushing through his head. And he literally fell to the floor crying. And he couldn't get up. And his phone is going off. And they're calling him and saying, we need you here. We can't do the sale unless you come. And he said, I'm done. And he hung up the phone. He ended up doing tshuva. He's a Breslov chassid. He goes to Uman every year for Rosh Hashanah. He has many, many people who actually teaches Torah to them. So you asked, how do you develop a more feminine relationship with Hashem and Uman? Everyone has their version of that. And that's part of it.
You're opening yourself up to be the vessel to receive.
Yeah.
There's also times of the year when women go versus
Yeah.
men.
A lot of women go on Shabbat Hanukkah. It's a very big time to go.
Okay, you've been, haven't you? You've been.
I've been there twice.
To Uman?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, guys. Everybody have an amazing new year. I hope you guys eat a lot of honey with your challah. And it's a really sweet year. I hope whatever you need a redemption in, whether it's with health or whether it's with wealth or whether it's with family or we just want the collective redemption of the Jewish people, which we so need and so want. I hope this year really is the year of Padeh, the year of Geula, the year of redemption. And I hope we're all able to tap into this redemptive feminine energy and bring it into our lives and hopefully into our families' lives and we'll see the Mashiach soon.
No problem.
Yeah.
As well.